All right, guys, get ready for the show. A lot to cover on today's broadcast. Some injuries to the University of Virginia football team. Arguably the top explosive offensive playmaker, and then a defender and a linebacker, and Chico Bennett Jr., who is going to really contribute some heavy minutes and some heavy tackles. So Lavelle Davis Jr., the wide receiver who exploded on the scene as a first year, he suffers an ACL injury, as does Georgia Tech transfer Chico Bennett Jr., a linebacker, both out for an extended period of time. Both will miss a large chunk of the Virginia football campaign, this coming Virginia football season. We'll talk about those injuries today on the program. We got news about a new development coming to Albemarle County and to the urban ring right down Avon Extended. This new development includes a strong position for the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust and the opportunity for folks in this fine Central Virginia community to maybe get buy a home through the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust. We have that story for you, a story that was broken from a news standpoint on Real Talk this morning on the I Love CVille Network. Real Talk with Greg Slater, Keith Smith, and Susan Steinmart. So we'll have clips and highlights from the newest development announcement from a real estate standpoint in the urban ring down Avon Extended, including the public release of the first of 3 of 15 Land Trust new construction homes for sale in Spring Hill development. We'll talk Albemarle County students returning to in-person instruction. City Council has nixed the stiffer COVID rules for Charlottesville. A chicken wing shortage in the United States. You heard me correctly. A chicken wing shortage. The injuries to the Virginia football team, and one of the key players over the last 6 or 7 years with the Washington football team, Jordan Reed, has announced his retirement. So a lot we're going to cover on the I Love CVille show. Do me a favor, give the show a like and a share anywhere you're watching, and we'll get started here in a matter of moments. Hit that like button for us, guys. That'd mean the world to us. Hit that like button. Share that show for us. Tell your buddies about the show. Tag a friend. Let them know we're talking UVA football. We're talking real estate. We're talking rental market. We're talking city council policy, Albemarle County policy, and so much more on the I Love CVille show on this glorious day to be alive in Central Virginia. Judah Wickhauer, I'm feeling pretty good. Let's start the show, sir, when you're ready. Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille show. My name is Jerry Miller. It is a Tuesday afternoon, and we're live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, of course, Albemarle County, and the world on the I Love CVille network. We have some serious injuries for the Virginia football team, which we will cover today on the program, including an injury in ACL to both guys, an ACL injury to both guys, including to one player, a wide receiver who exploded on the scene as a first-year wide receiver. These two injuries will limit 2 key guys, 2 key contributors, 2 arguably stars on the team going into training camp from participating in live action into potentially November of the upcoming season. We'll have that story for you on the I Love CVille show. We'll talk Albemarle County students returning to the classroom, but not until the fall. The good news is it's 5 days a week of in-person education. How about City Council voting to loosen the COVID restrictions in the city of Charlottesville? We have that story for you. And so much more on a beautiful Tuesday, including a new housing development planned for Avon Extended, Spring Hill Village on Avon Extended to be in fact. Stanley Martin, the builder and the developer behind Spring Hill Village, has kind of cornered off or earmarked a little portion of the development for the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust and 15 homes tied to area median income that can be purchased through the land trust. So excited to bring that story to you on the I Love Seville show. We have a nationwide chicken wing shortage. If you like going to your favorite watering hole, your favorite restaurant, to get some beers and some wings, well, folks, it may be a little bit more challenging as a nationwide chicken wing shortage with the cost of goods. Yes, the cost of chicken wings up north of 40% across the country. So we'll talk about that on the show, along with Jordan Reed's retirement, the standout tight end in the National Football League who has battled injuries throughout his career. The one-time Pro Bowler Jordan Reed has retired from the NFL, and we'll close the program with one of the mental giants in this community, Alex Erpy, CEO, Emergent Financial Services, will join us in about 18 minutes. Alex Erpy, CEO of Emergent Financial Services. We'll talk a little Bitcoin and the volatility this digital currency has experienced in 2021, certainly this past weekend. Is it best to own Bitcoin, or is it best to own Bitcoin passively through positions like PayPal that are releasing financial services infrastructure to allow folks to trade, to buy and sell Bitcoin through PayPal? I personally own PayPal, also the owner of Venmo PayPal, but I do not personally own any Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about that with Alex Erpy today on the I Love Seville show. The first topic has got to be education. 5 days a week of in-person classes for Albemarle County students will not happen anytime soon. To be specific, it won't happen until the fall semester. They will stay virtual or this hybrid setting for the rest of the school year, with the expectation that 5 days a week is the default setting for county schools come fall semester. So it's a positive, I would say, that the default setting for Albemarle County schools in the fall semester is in person. I think a lot of students and a lot of parents wanted to see that default setting get expedited till right now. Now a little bit more of a wait and see type of scenario. Regardless, the news is the default or the expectation setting for county schools in the fall is in person. They will, county school leadership, offer a virtual setting along with the in-person default in the fall as well. So parents that don't want their kids going back to the school system 5 days a week in person will have a virtual option. I think the majority of parents across Albemarle County want to see their young buck, their young buckaroo, their young buckarah learning in a classroom in person with teachers and classmates, as opposed to picking up the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s in the coat closet, the broom closet, or the spare bedroom. I was intrigued. I found it curious that this all virtual option will still be offered and presented to parents and students come fall. The reason I'm intrigued, curious of this all virtual option for students this fall is I wonder if the school model of students living and learning in antiquated buildings that aren't cleaned as much as they should be, with poor ventilation, with some classrooms not having windows, just expensive infrastructures. I've wondered aloud on the show if these expensive, antiquated, poorly ventilated, poorly clean, older infrastructures and buildings are truly the future of public school in education. The fact that virtual education is being offered as a possibility or as an option this fall means that this form of learning is still something that's on the table, okay? The default method is 5 days a week in person and in the classroom. I can promise you there will be some parents, some students that take the virtual approach. However, I'm curious to see come fall semester how many of our public school students in our various school systems choose to learn in person, and how many choose to learn virtually, and how many choose to learn in a hybrid virtual in-person setting. I would wager now that 80% or more, let's take Albemarle County, 80% or more of students and their families in Albemarle County this fall will choose to learn in person, with 20% or less selecting the hybrid or all virtual options. I want to see how that shakes out. I want to see how that influences taxpayer money, funding from the state, if students choose not to go 5 days a week to the classroom. That's something, it's a metric we got to follow closely, which we will on the I Love Seville show. Regardless, a number of parents, a number of kids and their families breathing a sigh of relief, a clear expectation now that the start of this coming semester, next school year, the default learning setting is in person for Albemarle County. Let's go to local government. City Council has nixed the tougher, stricter, more stringent COVID rules for Charlottesville. Now remember, at one time, the city of Charlottesville had a COVID structure that was more stringent than the Commonwealth of Virginia. However, in its meeting yesterday, with a 4-1 vote, the only naysayer vote was Nakia Walker on this. A 4-1 vote, City Council has said, let's go to the Commonwealth, the statewide COVID-19 guidelines for the city of Charlottesville. Now both Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville are on the same page. Albemarle County earlier this month, on the 7th of April, Albemarle County's Board of Supervisors agreed to loosen the throttle and have Albemarle County's COVID guidelines be synonymous with that of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Well, yesterday, which was the 19th of April, the city of Charlottesville followed Albemarle County's Board of Supervisors, and the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors followed the governor's office. Now with the change with looser COVID guidelines, the city had been mostly in line with state regulations except on indoor capacity for restaurants, farm wineries, breweries, and distilleries, which Charlottesville kept consistent with Albemarle at 50% of the lowest occupancy load, or 50 people for places without an established occupancy rate. With the looser changes, patrons indoors at restaurants, farm wineries, breweries, and distilleries will be required to be separated by 6 feet. Private bookings are capped at 50 people. Entertainment venues will now be able to host events at 30% of their capacity, or 500 people indoors, whichever is less, while outdoor venues will be able to host at 30% of capacity. So this is good news. This is good news for the breweries. This is good news for the wineries, for the wedding venues. This is good news for the music venues. This is good for the entertainment venues. This is good for anyone whose business model is predicated on people or groups of people in one area celebrating or doing something. Tasting rooms, beer clubs, wine clubs, weddings, concerts, family reunions, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, any kind of get-together. These looser COVID restrictions are good news, and many, including myself, would say, about darn time. The vaccinations are becoming ubiquitous and readily available. Now anyone 16 or over in the Commonwealth can get the needle in their arm. Okay? You had the CDC say Earlier this week, and by earlier this week I mean yesterday, they said of all the people vaccinated in America, and how many people have been vaccinated in America? I'm going to Google that real quick. I think it's close to 100 million. How many people have been COVID vaccinated in America? I'm Googling it right now. I mean, folks, we're talking fully vaccinated in America, close to 86 million people. One-dosed people in America, over 133 million. What's the American population of America? I'm Googling it right now. Population of America. The population of the United States of America in 2019 was 328 million. Of those 328 million American citizens, 132 million plus, almost 133 million, have at least one shot of this vaccine. So that is over 1/3 of the American population. I mean, I'm talking 38% of Americans have at least got one shot. Are you with me? 86 million of Americans, 86 million Americans have been vaccinated fully. So let's get that math a little tighter, okay? 328 million people in this country. You're looking at 25% of Americans who have been fully vaccinated. 26%. 26% of Americans fully vaccinated. The CDC says earlier this week that of those fully vaccinated people, only 6,000 people have gotten COVID since getting fully vaccinated. I like those odds. I like those numbers. Soon you're going to start seeing the threshold of who could get this vaccine drop lower and lower. And every parent of a teenager, every parent of a middle school student, every parent of most parents of teenagers, middle school students, and elementary school students and toddlers cannot wait to see that threshold drop to like 1, 2, 3 years old can get the vaccine. City of Charlottesville loosens the COVID restrictions. It's going to help restaurants. It's going to help bars, venues tied to sports viewing, concert venues, wedding venues, family venues, breweries, wineries, and vineyards. About darn time. About darn time. All right, let's get a clip for you on housing. So Stanley Martin is a big-time player in new construction in Central Virginia and in the Shenandoah Valley. A big-time player. Stanley Martin is building a new development, a new neighborhood, if you may, down Avon Extended. We learned all about this from Greg Slater, Susan Steinmart, and Keith Smith earlier this morning on Real Talk, the real estate show we do on the I Love Seville Network, presented by the Yes Team Realtors and Yes Realty Partners. The name of the development, Spring Hill Village, is right in the urban ring, right past Mountain View Elementary. Right as Avon Extended starts merging into 20 South like you're driving to Scottsville. 15 of the units in this new development have been earmarked for housing that can be sold through the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust. You know I'm a huge fan of the Land Trust on the I Love Seville Network and their mission. 15 brand new units. We're going to hear from Greg Slater of Ness Realty about Spring Hill Village and what you, the viewer, you, the listener, can do to buy an affordable piece of property in Albemarle County, right in the urban ring. I'm talking like a 5-iron away from the city-county line. A 5-iron away from the Charlottesville City-Albemarle County line. You got that sound ready to go, J-Dubs? Greg Slater's good people. I'm a huge fan of him on this program. Here's Mr. Greg Slater talking about Spring Hill Village, the 15 units the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust has to sell, and your opportunity to purchase a piece of the American dream, which is home ownership. Judah, 3, 2, 1.
What we're talking about is an opportunity in a new community in the Charlottesville urban ring called Spring Hill Village.
Oh.
So if you were to travel south on Avon Street from Charlottesville, it's roughly 3 miles from the city limit. You go out past Mill Creek, Lake Renovia, the turn off to Monticello High School. You continue a little further. There's a community called Avinity on the left, and then there's an older community called Avon Park on the right. It's across the street from Avon Park. And this is literally your last stop before you would run into Route 20 and then turn right to go Scottsville or left to go back towards the interstate. And the property extends from Avon Street basically almost all the way to Route 20. So if you were to come down Route 20, you have it's like the opposite of a bird's eye view. You're looking uphill, but you can see the scope of the project.
It's a great spot.
From that. It's a great spot with great views. And so Stanley Martin has created a 2-bedroom townhome for us. 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 1-car garage, 3 levels, energy efficient, low maintenance exterior, planned urban development with the opportunity to have the dog park and the open spaces and things like that.
The tot lot.
The average new home sales price outside of our model there is going to fall on either side of $400,000.
I've got a couple deals going.
They have larger 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom townhomes, and they also have villas, which are attached homes with first floor masters. So if you're interested in finding more information, I'll give you the address again. It's 26 Dolphin Drive. It's not a real address. You can't Google it. That's the lot number. We don't have a real address yet because the home's not finished. But Dolphin is spelled D-A-U-P-H-I-N, not like the porpoise. But if you go on Zillow or mycar.com and put in 26 Dolphin Drive, you should be able to find it. If you can't find it there, you can find it at nestrealty.com/26 Dolphin. And there we've actually attached all the materials that go along with the orientation and the next steps and the floor plans, and just about everything you would want to know about this is sitting there.
Mr. Vice Chair, I hate to disagree.
That's news, guys. That's big-time news. It's good news for the community. It's news you'll see in traditional media, television and radio, I would think, over the next week. News from the chairman and vice chairman's mouth and from the executive director of the Land Trust, Susan Steinmart herself. 15 units tied to AMI. Legit. 15 units of housing tied to AMI. And then this Spring Hill Village development close to town, it's going to explode. It's going to boom. It's going to boom. I'm really impressed with Stanley Martin's commitment here to affordable housing. I learned this morning. Under the previous proffer system, a developer or a builder could earmark units that are for sale, housing that's for sale, and could earmark it as, quote, affordable housing, quote, and say, we're going to sell these these individual units, and we're going to restrict them to area median income, and we're going to give it an effort for 90 days. After 90 days was up, if those units did not sell in the old system, the units could then be sold for fair market value. Stanley Martin is committed to selling these 15 units regardless of time constraints or not, from an AMI standpoint and from an affordable housing standpoint and through the land trust model. That is big time. That is big time, especially with the location that is so close to the city of Charlottesville. If you're interested in purchasing a home, one of 15 through the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust, I would very much go to tjclt.org right now. tjclt.org right now. And then click on the menu bar tab, Steps to Home Ownership. because these bad boys are going to go quickly. tjclt.org now and click Steps to Home Ownership on the menu bar if you want a piece of the American dream. 2 minutes away from Alex Erpy, CEO of Emergent Financial Services. A couple other things I'd like to get out of the notebook. Serious injuries have hit the Virginia football team. Wide receiver Lavelle Davis, ACL injury. Linebacker Chico Bennett, ACL injury. Lavelle Davis is a name you gotta know. As a freshman this past year, he was 6'7", the big guy on the outside. This dude had an immediate impact. He had 5 receiving touchdowns. He had 515 receiving yards. He was a big play guy that caught passes in double coverage and balls that were thrown up where he could use his 6'7" frame. ACL injury, the earliest Lavelle Davis gets back is maybe November. Chico Bennett Jr., a transfer from Georgia Tech, also an ACL injury. He led all of freshman Georgia Tech tacklers in 2019 before a season-ending injury cut the 2019 season short for him. So here, Bronco Mendenhall loses 2 guys, one on offense, one on defense, that without question were going to contribute to the bunch from game 1. Now, November, the earliest for their returns. Jordan Reed, the tight end for the Washington football team, who finished his career in the NFL playing for the San Francisco 49ers, he retired today. He had flashes of star power and brilliance while playing for the Washington football team. Unfortunately for Jordan Reed, he could not stay healthy. He was constantly ravaged by concussions. The guy had size and speed, 6'2", 242, with great 40 time and lateral quickness. He gave defensive backs nightmares because he was physical, and he gave safeties even more nightmares because he could run by them. Unfortunately, concussions ended his career as a tight end. He finishes his career as a one-time Pro Bowl player. The time a handful of years back where he helped lead the Washington football team to the playoffs. One more item out of the notebook before we get to our buddy Alex Erpy. Folks, you got a major, I love stories like this, major chicken wing shortage going on right now in America. The cost of chicken wings is up 40+%. 40+%. Forcing many restaurateurs and bar owners to handle this very difficult question. Do we pull the bone-in wings off the menu and go boneless until the cost of goods stabilizes? This commodity we call boned-in chicken wings. The cost of goods is so high, 40+%, that we may have to pull them off the menu, or we have to pass the cost of goods, the increased COGS, onto the diner and risk polarizing our guests. One thing after the other in the restaurant business, that's for sure. You know what? I just go boneless wings. Why not just go boneless wings for a little bit? A lot of people say the bone-in is more flavor. These are two things you're gonna have beef with me. I'm a drumstick guy over a flats guy. The drumsticks are easier to eat. I think they're meatier than the flats. Judah, you agree?
I agree.
I mean, it's like, I just don't understand the folks that go with the flats. The flats are more difficult to eat and you get less meat on the bone. My wife likes the flats.
It's white meat, so it's drier.
Okay. The dark meat with the drumstick, you don't get your fingers as dirty. You can hold the edge of the drumstick and you can eat the meaty part, no problem. Then you throw away the bone. Here's another thing that's going to cause beef. Boneless chicken wings are just as good and less messy than bone-in chicken wings. Now, the naysayers are going to say, Jerry, the boneless chicken wings is way drier than the bone-in chicken wing. It's negligible, the moisture versus the dryness of the boneless versus the bone-in. It's negligible, the delta with the moisture. Negligible. And the delta from a messiness standpoint is pretty large. Boneless, a lot less messy than bone-in chicken wings. I just don't understand the commitment to flats and the commitment to bone-in. I'm going to ask Alex Erpy that question. In fact, I have Alex Erpy on the line, and this is going to be the most difficult question we ask this mental giant. First, my friend, drumsticks or flats for Alex Erpy?
Even in the Italian side of my family, you don't mind the messiness because everyone just gets messy all the time. There is no part that isn't at some point devoured by someone in an Italian family of anything, of a chicken, a fish, anything. So I like the flat ones that like you go in there and do a little work.
Is my boy Xavier Erpy a drumstick or a flat guy?
Ooh, I think he's usually drumstick. He'll go for.
I love that guy.
He likes those little pieces in there. Yeah, he's your kind of chicken eater.
Boneless or bone-in for the Erpies, and Alex in particular?
I don't think I've ever had a boneless chicken wing. We've only ever bought the ones with the bone in. Like you put it. There's a bone. Is a boneless chicken wing actually a chicken wing?
Is a boneless chicken wing actually a chicken wing? That right there is the $1 million question. I think you say a boneless chicken wing is not actually a chicken wing? Judah says he doubts it. Why do you doubt it?
I wonder whether it's just a piece of chicken breast cut to look like a chicken wing and put the same way, and it's not actually a wing. I'm curious how you would get the bone out of there and give me the same thing and actually be the same piece of the chicken. I have my doubts.
He has his doubts, Alex. Judah, what are your doubts over there?
I think they would risk leaving in stuff like the gristle, the joint ends, and
so you agree with Alex?
Nobody wants to bite into that.
He agrees with Alex. Man, that is a question. Is a boneless chicken wing really a chicken wing? That right there just got me thinking. Another thing that got me thinking with this dude right here is, good Lord, the volatility of Bitcoin. I mean, this past weekend, it's all over the place. I mean, loses tremendous market cap here. What's going on with Bitcoin? And then that leads us to the next question. Should we have Bitcoin in our portfolio, Alex Erpy?
It really is funny. I always joke that I can tell what Bitcoin is doing based on whether or not people are asking me about it. Because when we get random people calling and saying, Alex, should I be buying Bitcoin? It's usually after Bitcoin's gone up. I can tell Bitcoin has taken a nice ride up for a while. But then I remember 2011 when Bitcoin crashed like 40%. Nobody was calling me in 2011 to ask about Bitcoin anymore because it was like, oh no, I don't want to touch that. So I can always tell how it's doing because it is a very volatile, form of currency, if you want to call it that, that's out there. And it's just, we tend to use the phrase, at least at Emergent, we tend to distinguish between investing and speculation. And Bitcoin is in the speculation realm, in the sense that if you think about it as just an average investor, right? As a retail person, when you invest in a company or a bond, right, you're really investing in some kind of tangible product or service. They either make something or they do something, a certain company. And if they don't do either of those yet, you're basing it on the intelligence of the person in charge of the company that they will figure out to invent. So in other words, with Apple back in the day, maybe you bought Apple because you trusted that Steve Jobs would invent something new that would make the company do well. But with Bitcoin, you're really just asking the question. It's not a currency that is recognized in terms of a government saying we want you to pay our taxes in Bitcoin. And it really doesn't, it's not a product or a service. You're just betting that other people will buy it and then it will go up, that more people will use it and the value will go up. And what's interesting, I think, about this past weekend is just some of how quickly there were so many rumors out there as to why it had fallen. And there was talk about, were people getting nervous that maybe the governments would crack down on it? Was there an outage in China where a lot of the farms, the Bitcoin mining farms, are that produce Bitcoins and increase that money supply? Did something happen there that all of a sudden it collapsed? And I think that just goes to show the volatility of it, that nobody's quite sure how it works. It's very difficult to wrap your head around, and so the slightest anxiety can sort of set off either an enormous spike or a plunge. And so I tend to look at Bitcoin, I think when people look at their portfolios, put it into that 2% speculation category. In other words, if you want to take 2% of your long-term portfolio and say, maybe I want to be in Bitcoin, maybe I want to be in some other obscure currency play or something that I think my friend told me is a great idea, use that in your little 2% gambling speculation part. But I wouldn't consider it as something to mix in with the other mainstream assets like your stocks, your bonds, your real estate, maybe your other commodities. I wouldn't consider it in the same vein as that, just because of the nature of it at this point.
So much to unpack there. Elon Musk tweets about Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin explodes. Mm-hmm. So that's an example of kind of this unpredictable nature of this currency. Another thing to highlight with Bitcoin is if there was eventually some kind of like higher power, and I don't know who or what this entity would be, but if some kind of higher power, some kind of entity started cracking down on Bitcoin, how much would the currency suffer if like legislation or rules were put into play? Because a lot of this currency is the black market, it's drug trade, it's illegal activity, it's trading on the dark web, so it cannot be tracked back from buyer to seller of services or goods, whatever those goods or services are. Both those topics to you, Alex.
I think, and that's I think what the question is with the long-term future of Bitcoin. It may go up and down in terms of the short term, but you have to always ask yourselves for the long term, what's the long-term future of this type of cryptocurrency? And actually, it's funny because Nicholas writes our commentary that we send out to our clients once a quarter, and his latest commentary that we just sent out to them was on Bitcoin, just its long-term future. And one of the key things he points out is for any currency to be really long-term, sustainable and viable, at some point the government has to say, are we going to allow you to pay taxes with this? I mean, that's really the strength. Let's say at some point the dollar becomes pointless in all aspects and you would rather use Bitcoin for everything. You would still have no choice but to have dollars because the United States government says you must pay your taxes in dollars.
There you go.
I cannot write a check to the Treasury in euros. I can't say, can you take some chickens in exchange for my taxes? You have to pay it in dollars, and that's how they keep that control. And if you think about the long-term future of Bitcoin, I don't necessarily have a doubt that there may one day be a cryptocurrency that's used among world governments or among the United States. But if it's the case, it wouldn't be Bitcoin. It wouldn't be any of the currently existing ones because you can't control the money supply on Bitcoin when you don't control the way it is data mined. Right now, the way the blockchain works, a government like a Federal Reserve cannot have Bitcoin and say, yeah, we want to increase the supply of Bitcoin to counteract, a depressionary environment. We can't restrict the supply of Bitcoin to counteract inflation. So it's not a very good tool for the government as it's currently constructed. And at the point at which the governments of the world say we want our own cryptocurrency, they're going to make all the other ones illegal. They're not going to permit you to transact in Bitcoin when they want you to use their own new currency. And I think that's the long-term issue that I have with a lot of the cryptocurrencies is at what point does the crackdown happen? Because it'll never reach full currency status.
So, okay, I'm with you so far on everything you just said. You explained that well. So if there was a standard global currency that worked with all countries or governments, okay, what would it be? A new currency that's created? I mean, would it be a digital version of gold? Would it be, go ahead.
It's tough to tell what they would pursue. They seem to be going down that route. I mean, I've noticed, if you've noticed, not in the United States at this point, But in certain other countries like India, they are cracking down on large denomination bills. And the reason they're doing it is they want to encourage more people to be in the banking system.
Okay.
It enables the financial powers that be, the central banks, to
Control the money.
Exactly, to control the money supply better.
Yeah.
And so, if you notice, there's sort of a push in that direction. I'm not sure whether the United States will actually be able to overcome the desire of people to hold physical dollars. I think there's still an attraction of $100 in my hand is $100 in my hand. I don't have to worry about what happens with my bank, any shenanigans they're playing, things like that. And there's sort of a comfort level with it. But the one thing we do feel pretty strongly about, I would say, is that if the day comes that the United States or the world pursues their own digital currency, they're going to go and say you can't use the other ones, because they're not going to want you to, like you said, they're not going to want that black market, underground market type of transaction when they have their own digital currency that they can control.
So what happens then with everybody sitting on the little or great amount of Bitcoin they have?
It becomes, outside the black market, it becomes functionally worthless. And that's the problem, right? There's no physical item that you hold with Bitcoin. Its value lies in whether other people are willing to transact in it. And that's why you see it go up when you have Elon Musk tweeting about it, or when you have PayPal saying we'll accept it, or when you have, it's funny, when Nick was looking it up, there's actually a number of companies you wouldn't suspect, like Microsoft and others, that actually will accept Bitcoin.
Who are the other ones?
As a form of payment. Say again?
Who are the other ones?
So I think Microsoft, Overstock, BMW, Etsy, Shopify, Square.
Wow.
A number of companies that you wouldn't instantly think of that actually accept it as a legitimate form of payment. But at the point at which that stops, where's the underlying value? Right? If you think about a company like let's say you purchase like a Microsoft, right? Even if other people aren't interested in owning Microsoft stock, you still have a piece of a company that actually makes something. Right? Microsoft actually makes computers. Let's say they can do nothing else but send you a dividend. You're getting paid nonetheless for owning a company that produces a tangible object. With Bitcoin, there's no dividend, there's no interest payment. You don't actually even own something physical. It's not like gold, that as much as it would be impossible to actually transact in gold bars, there's actually something on the other end of that. But with Bitcoin, there isn't. So the entire value rests on, do other people accept it as a form of payment? And so when more people do, we see the price rise. When questions arise as to either the viability of it in terms of how Bitcoins are actually created electronically, or questions arise as to whether governments are going to crack down on it, then you see the value fall. Because then there's this question in people's minds, is there any value? Because there's no underlying value. There's no actual object. So the only thing left is, what's the value in other people's minds?
Alex Erpy, dropping bombs per usual here, knowledge bombs. Was that Nicholas Erpy's research?
That was. He did a full analysis. We like to, at least once a quarter, provide some kind of commentary and analysis.
So it's like a newsletter.
It's basically like a newsletter to our clients, sort of.
That's awesome.
To make things understandable that seem complex.
Sure.
And also just to sort of pique interest, to just see, all right, this is something that you may want to learn about that we think is interesting. And so he did the research on just historically what turns something into a currency, what makes a currency, and whether or not Bitcoin fits that mold. So he does a good work on that.
Which one of the either meme or fad or kind of in vogue positions or topics does your firm get hit up with the most? I mean, it's got to be Bitcoin's got to be up there. I mean, is the GameStop fad hitting you up, or is that kind of not really with some of your clients? What are you getting hit up with?
The three things are, the number two, because GameStop, we did have a couple with GameStop, but that has fizzled out.
Uh-huh.
The two consistent ones are cryptocurrencies. What do you think of cryptocurrency? What do you think of Bitcoin? And number two, always a new tech stock. So last year there was a lot of, should I buy Tesla? Should I buy Peloton? Should I buy Zoom? So there's always, I think when people hear friends and neighbors talking about, oh, I bought some of this and it went up, what do you think about this? We'll get a lot of those types of questions. And for us, it's more about just educating people on, you have to know what the purpose of your investing is. In other words, if the purpose of your account that you have with us or with your own private account is, I put $2,000 in here because I just want to play the markets, I want to enjoy the thrill of investing, then we'll tell people that's fine. You do that. And in reality, you probably don't need our advice to do a $2,000 gambling speculative account. But if the purpose of your investing is, how do I prepare my family for a long-term future? How do I buy that home in 10 years? How do I have a vacation account? How do I make sure I'm good for retirement? Then you have to be thinking beyond just individual fads and stocks into, how do I participate in the growth of the world? And how do I do that in a way that is most efficient? And that's, I think, where really the financial advisors come in, because that's where we have the research and the study and the background to be able to do that and really make sure people are on a good track. So it always comes down to, what's the goal? And I think when you're clear on your objectives, you're able to make a good plan about it. And it's making sure you don't mix up the objectives of, is this a speculative account that I'm working with, or is this my retirement? Because if it's my retirement, you don't want to be putting it in the slot machine of the stock market.
He's good, man. CEO Alex Erpy of Emergent Financial Services. He hosts Today y Mañana, co-hosts Today y Mañana with Xavier Erpy. That show airs Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love Seville network. And you got two fantastic guests lined up for Thursday morning.
Oh, it's going to be a blast. We've got Johnny Epps. He's the owner and chocolate maker at Odyssey Chocolate. So, I mean, if you know my dad and I,
you guys like the sweets.
We love chocolate. It's the sweets and the chocolate. So we're going to have a ball probably with that one, asking him about I want to know every conceivable kind of chocolate he makes and how he pulls this out. And then we'll pair our chocolate with a little shortbread, because we'll have Anwar Allen from Allen Stoddard Shortbread. He's the owner along with his wife, Laura. Just a beautiful couple, beautiful person that's great to talk to, and a great story. Talk about Charlottesville success story, doing the hard work to grow that into a great business that you see almost everywhere. It's like so many stores now I walk into, I'm like, I know that shortbread. I recognize that on the shelf.
Yeah, started at the farmer's market, guys, now at Whole Foods everywhere. And if you have time, ask him. He actually was the leader, and I guess the teacher, you would call it, of a pod, a learning, like a neighborhood pod. So he was kind of like the ringleader. His daughter and a number of other children that were his daughter's age were involved in this pod. So here he's running the family business along with Laura, while like being the North Star for a little educational pod for a handful of kids. Wow. So I mean, that's going to be an incredible interview Thursday at 10:15 a.m. Today y Mañana with the very knowledgeable Alex Erpy, the very affable Xavier Erpy. Big fans of the Erpy fellas, and Nicholas Erpy. I feel like I know Nicholas. And your brother, is it Michael?
Michael as well. He also works on the research side, and it's funny. Nicholas has definitely taken you referred to him as a social media ninja.
Yeah, I'm serious.
He has taken that to heart, because I've been noticing if you look very carefully at all his shares, his social media shares now that he really does such a great job on, he's got the little hashtag of social media ninja in there.
Yes,
he has adopted that persona that you gave him very well.
Nicholas Erpy is also the easiest of the Erpy brothers to manicure and groom. Is that not right?
He is indeed. I joked, for those who love the Lemony Snicket series back in the day, the series of unfortunate events, there was a villainous couple called that they had no names, but in Lemony Snicket style, they were the man with a beard but no hair, and a woman with hair but no beard. And so I always refer to the three Erpy brothers. I'm the man with a hair and a beard. Nick is the man with a beard but no hair, and Michael is the man with hair but no beard.
There you go.
So between the three of us, we have it all covered.
Also, if you want to know a little tidbit about Alex Erpy, Alex Erpy not only is a financial genius, not only could be legitimately an award-winning broadcaster, I sincerely mean this. I was actually encouraging him a couple weeks ago to get involved from a local politics standpoint. I mean, I truly think he could win there. He's also a novelist. He's a writer. Alex Erpy writes
writing.
novels.
I do. I've written them for a long time, and still trying to get the first novel published. But the short stories, I've gotten several published in some literary magazines. I've loved writing since I was maybe 10, 12 years old.
Why not go the self-publishing route? Have you thought about it?
I have thought about it, and my goal is to try to see the traditional. There's a lot of challenges with self-publishing in terms of just the time that you have to put in to do the marketing yourself and to really go down that road. So my goal is to attempt at least the traditional publisher route on the novels, and then see what happens when maybe go into self-publishing, either with the short stories or otherwise. Maybe when I have enough short stories published, I can do a little anthology of them and just.
Well, you could use the social media ninja, Nicholas Erpy, to help build the brand.
I can indeed. Well, Nicholas Erpy, he actually is a published author. He went the combination publishing route. He actually has a novel that you can purchase from him.
Dude, the Erpies are like Renaissance men over here. I mean, Xavier, do they take after you, Xavier? I mean, your sons are like Renaissance people. Here's where he gives props to Mrs. Erpy right here. That's what you're about to do, aren't you?
It is. I mean, especially the go-getter. My mom is just really good at like encouraging you to think of new ideas and what can you do to make this work, and really just so supportive. And they pushed education a lot when we were younger, the writing, the reading. And my dad too is published from back in the day. He has a book of Cuban poetry, and he is on a list. We found this out when we were in college. We went to go discover him to see whether he was in UVA Alderman Library, and sure enough, his book is in the stacks at Alderman, and he's on a list of exiled Cuban poets.
Get out!
Never mind that he was exiled from Cuba at 6 years old, or 5 years old, but he's on a list of exiled Cuban poets.
That sounds so heroic and so dashing.
It does. I mean, when we have some copies of the book and we're like, this book, Instantes Violados is the name, and it's like this book is an exiled Cuban poet, which
Xavier Erpy, what a pimp!
Yes, he is. We leave out the part that he was 5 when he left.
Yeah, we don't need to know that.
It sound like he was there fighting, and he fought his way out of Cuba, and they had to get rid of him because his poetry was just too good and too counter-revolutionary.
Every time we see Xavier on Thursday, Judah, we got to call him. There's the exiled Cuban poet, Xavier Erpy. That should be his lower third for Today y Mañana. I've enjoyed this interview. I always do, Alex Erpy, my friend. We will see you Thursday morning.
Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun.
You have a good one.
You too.
All right. Oh, man. Thursday morning, not only are you getting some common sense and financial perspective and advice from Alex and Xavier Erpy, but you're also getting perspective from the exiled Cuban poet, Xavier Erpy, and the novelist, Alex Erpy. That's a big-time show right there. All right, so that's the program. We're grateful for your support on the network. Oh, a couple things out of the notebook. I promised you yesterday more research and reconnaissance on Biscuit Run Park. We have a 1,200-acre park in the urban ring. They're right down Avon and 5th Street Extended. That's literally doing nothing right now. It's doing nothing from a housing standpoint, from a new construction standpoint. It's doing nothing from a quality of life standpoint. It's doing nothing from a generating revenue standpoint for Albemarle County. It's doing nothing from a community member being able to utilize the park. So I've reached out to a handful of people about getting more reconnaissance and intelligence on Biscuit Run Park, which we will spotlight here on the show. If you haven't realized, we're starting to work elements of importance to the community, City of Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and Central Virginia, those elements into the show, and as I learn more about them, I weave them into the campaign for Albemarle County Board of Supervisors, which I have launched. Our website for Albemarle County Board of Supervisors and my run for that seat, which is currently being held by Donna Price, our website will launch later this week. We'll make a big splash on the show for the new Jerry Miller for Board of Supervisors website here on the I Love CVille Network. I want to thank Alex Erpy for joining us. Judah Wickhauer is the director. My name is Jerry Miller. Thanks to Ting Crazy Fast Internet for being a part of the broadcast as well. You guys have a fantastic afternoon. Take care.